This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
I'm so happy you're here. And you know what? We are very, very late in doing this. Because,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's hard to do a podcast when you felt as crummy as you did this week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous.
Kind of made its rounds. Anybody that has little toddlers would understand this, or anybody if you have kids or grandkids that start school.
Or around kids that are in school.
Right, because you catch everything.
Yeah.
And then it was like that slow motion thing the other day, for me anyway, when I was holding Maddie. And she was sick. We were taking care of her. She was sick. And I looked one way and she looked the other way. And as we did, like, our mouths just like...
Oh, jeez.
And it was like, oh no. So, yeah, so it got me too. So,
jeez.
Yeah, it's made its rounds. But you're feeling better. You sound like it.
Yeah. Well, I still have a little bit of drainage, but it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what I had this idea, what I want to talk to you about today, because you do really well. We talked about mentoring. You know, you mentoring, and I want to talk to you about the things that trip you up still today, just in your life, whatever it is.
Right.
You know, any subject, any context, whatever it is.
Okay.
Because
I'd say carpets, but that's just stupid. Well, I guess not stupid per se, because Haley still does that.
Well, like tripping over the patterns on the carpet.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, so anyway, I know that you do have these things that pop up, and some of the things are continually kind of an issue for you in certain situations.
Yeah.
So I just thought it'd be nice if you could talk about those things, and that might be able to help somebody that's going through
issues.
It's just similar situations, and you know, just maybe it's not crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean crazy like cuckoo crazy. I mean crazy like it's like that thing, like it's funny but it's not funny. You say it's funny but it's really not funny. It's, right.
You still laugh though.
Oh, right. Right. But sometimes people can feel like, oh, if you worked so hard to get through something, then it's not an issue anymore.
Yeah. It's still occasionally an issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, no matter what it is, it's still like, let me give you a few examples of things that trip me up.
Okay.
Yeah. Whenever a prior experience that I have conflicts with what I'm told to do.
Whenever a prior experience conflicts with what you're told to do. So if you've been told to do something in a certain way in the past, and now you're being told to do that thing in a different way, that creates conflict, and you're not able to
follow through
and be comfortable in that situation.
Yes. So like, for example, let's take I was going to say cleaning the toilet, but that doesn't happen often anyway. Let's say sweeping the floors.
Right.
All right. Whenever I sweep the floors, I do them in a certain order, like a certain way to do it. And this is just an example, but it's not necessarily something that's happened. I'm just giving an example of it. Let's say I'm following that pattern, and then you come along and say, hey, you didn't do this part, you need to do it like this. And it's different than what my pattern dictates I should do. And the way that I've done this pattern.
Mm-hmm. That's different than what I thought you were going to say. Because what I thought that you were talking about is if you were told by Dad how to do something, and then I came either that same day or a few days later or the next time that you're doing that particular thing, and I said for you to do it a different way, then I thought that's what you were talking about. That if
both of them apply
the same way.
Yeah.
Because one of them seems like it's your pattern that you've developed, and so somebody's interrupting your pattern.
Whenever I first learn how to do something, I make it into a pattern. And so that I follow that pattern every time after.
Okay.
So whenever I say that I'm doing it in a certain pattern, that's because I've learned to do it in this pattern.
So once you do something the first time...
and I'm not saying I get it the first time all the time. Because, I mean, there are some things where I still don't necessarily know how to do it. Like, I've changed the oil in the car before, but that doesn't mean that I remember how to do it.
Right.
So, as an example. But
And in that example, there were people around you helping you and talking you through it and showing you what it is that you have to do.
Yes.
And you know that there were a lot of steps there to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember I have to drain the oil before I can put more and change the filter before I can put more oil back into it.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean that I remember how to do that.
Right. Yeah. So,
except that it's underneath the car.
right. So, but that's so if you're what you said in the beginning was whenever prior experience conflicts with what you're being told. So it's the change in the process.
Yes.
So
and
once
one thing that does prevent this conflict of experience versus what I'm told to do is if whenever it's explained out to me as to why it should be done the new way, that and it's explained in such a way that I understand it and it makes sense as to why I should be doing it that way.
Okay. I would imagine that a lot of the problems come up to begin with is because maybe for the people telling you, it's just their experience that the way they do it works for them.
Yeah.
I was talking to RJ, your brother-in-law, a couple weeks ago.
And the artist for your blog.
And we were talking about that he works with a guy, and they do things in a certain process. So everybody learns, and they're doing things their own way. RJ was doing things his way, and the guy got really upset because it was different than the way that he always does it. And RJ was saying, I get that's your way. This is how I was taught, and this is the way that I've developed this, and it really makes sense for me, and it's quality work. And the guy got really upset, and was it hard for him to see that somebody else was doing something different. So I bring that example up because a lot of times that
I see that flippantly. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
People might not know that it's bothering you, that you're in a situation that's upsetting to you. And so when something is said, they're not even aware that what they're saying is creating anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you got to, it's different than what you normally do. And I know that with you, sometimes you don't say stuff.
Yeah. You're right, I don't say things because I don't really like conflict, for one.
But it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's conflict.
Right.
If something is being said, I mean, if you're talking around here, that's one thing. And if you're talking about with guys that you work with, or different, your boss for doing something different than a different boss, then I can see that it's a little bit creates more anxiety.
Yeah. And that has happened at the pressure washing and window washing thing that I do.
Right. And did you say anything?
Yeah. And
what happened?
They admitted that all the bosses have different styles of doing things. But that I have to do things a certain way, so that whenever I teach someone at the very beginning, they know how to do it the proper way, and once they get better at it, they can develop their own style of doing it.
Okay. So everybody has to be speaking the same language, doing the same thing, so that when new people are being taught, everybody knows that the communication is accurate, and then the job will be accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
But you still don't like the difference. You don't like the change.
Let me put it this way. I understand that there's differences between people in how they do things. So if it's just a personal experience versus my personal experience, I'm probably going to go with my personal experience because that's what I've been taught. That's how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can, it's essentially you persuading me, hey, this is better and easier.
Well, that goes into something that we talked about the other day.
When things are done in a different order than what I think they need to be done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that goes along right along with that. Because we're talking about people doing things in a different way,
mm-hmm.
which basically means things being done in a different order.
Yeah.
So the one thing is maybe you getting instructions from multiple people and they're all different. The instructions are different. How
right.
you do something, the guidelines may be different. That's frustrating to you because what are you supposed to do? Who do you follow? Which way do you go?
Right.
And in that, then, somebody does something in a particular order. Does it go? How does that feel if somebody tells you to do things in a different order than what you think they need, and then how you think they need to be done?
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. So, what happens for you, and how does it feel if somebody is telling you to do something in an order that's different than how you think it should be done?
It tears me up.
How?
Because I know that they're wanting me to do something in one way, where what I'm used to doing is a completely different way, and it's just pulling me back and forth. It's the same. It's anxiety. It creates a lot of anxiety, and it pushes me into inaction most of the time.
So you just don't know what to do, so you don't do anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not that I like that decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I'm constantly moving. It's like... you remember the original Dr. Dolittle movie?
Yes.
With the push me, pull you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is kind of how I'm feeling, where I'm being pulled in one direction, and then I move back in the other direction a couple of feet, then back and forth, and everything like that. That's how I'm feeling inside. And that kind of feeling
mm-hmm.
is really so stressful that I cannot move past it and function.
Right.
Which causes me so much stress and anxiety, which is compounded whenever, like, let's say it's something that you told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like clean the bathroom or something like that.
Okay.
And I have to do it in a certain order, and then I'm told to do it in a different order. Or something like that.
Okay.
And it's not that I'm not willing to do the work, but it's that I'm being stressed out so much by being pulled back and forth between which things I should do,
mm-hmm.
that it looks like I'm just standing there not doing anything. But it's not just the anxiety from that. It's also that the anxiety grows in intensity
mm-hmm.
the longer it takes for me to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, I'm also worried about the reaction that you guys will have towards my inaction.
So really, if so, something that like we're using that example, something that really doesn't matter to your dad or myself how it's done. There's a way that I do it, and so if I tell you to do it that way, the fact that you did it a different way is not going to upset me. It's more that it needs to be done.
Right.
So if you can get that done.
Right.
So what you're saying is that sometimes the anxiety of that is so intense, and then it leads into that feeling of not doing something the right way. And so this kind of snowballs. And what flashed in my head, one of my favorite movies of all time is called Clue.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And what it just reminded me of when you were talking about that is, that one scene where they all split up to see if anybody else was in the house. And then those two...
Which two?
The guy that... I don't know if you'll remember this or not. The guy that played Lenny on Laverne and Shirley.
I never saw Laverne and Shirley.
Okay. He's the FBI guy at the end. He's blonde.
Oh, you just get spoilers,
Oh,
people.
sorry.
So... I'm not going to mention who he is then.
Okay, good. Don't. So that guy, he's standing at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
And they're going up. They're supposed to go up the stairs, but neither one of them are moving.
Yes. It was like, you want to go first? Go ahead.
Yeah. No. You go. You go first. And then they just stand there and they don't do anything for a long time.
And then she says, "Well, why aren't you going?"
Yeah. Right. So that just what made me think of that is that they just were not able to move.
Yeah.
They knew what they needed to do. Sounded easy enough, but they couldn't move.
Yes.
So they were just standing at the bottom.
Yeah.
So is there any way that you found out through your life that can help to get you through that?
One of the most direct ways of dealing with it is asking about it. Like going back with the cleaning the bathroom analogy. You say, "I want you to do it like this." I could say something along the lines of, to clarify, you want for me to do it in this order and not necessarily in this order, which is what I've done in the past. And you would say whatever you would say, and I would have a clear-cut answer, and I'd be able to do it.
And so I know from experience, since we're talking about cleaning the bathroom, there's been times where I've said to you if you clean the bathroom, but I already cleaned the bathtub because the baby said to have baths.
Yeah. So
I just cleaned it before their bath.
Yeah.
And then that throws your pattern off.
Yeah, it can.
So it's not just a clear-cut understanding of what you have to do first or second or whatever it is, because part of that equation is removed, and so then that can be frustrating.
I find it joyful. You know why?
Why?
I don't have to clean the bathtub then.
Yeah, well, right.
In that specific example.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I remember when it would have been a big issue, because it would have thrown me off.
Right. Oh. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, you're right about that. So, your answer to that, to help anybody that's going through this, is for you to ask for clarification.
Yes.
Or to say, I prefer to do this first.
Is that okay?
Right.
Is what I'd add on to that, yes.
Okay.
And one other thing is that if you're the parent of or someone in charge of the person who's autistic, one thing that you could do is you could clarify that before they even ask, I want for you to do it in this order so that let me try it again. I want for you to do it in this order, regardless of how you've done it in the past.
Okay. Well, something that I've noticed too is that I think needs to be mentioned, and since we're on this particular subject, it's like telling you to clean your room.
Yeah, so many aspects to it.
Yeah, it's just too broad. It's too general.
Yeah.
It feels very abstract to you.
Yeah. So instead of saying clean the bathroom, instead of saying clean the bathroom, you could say, I want for you to spray the sink and bathtub down while it's sitting there cleaning it. I want for you to sweep the floors. Then you can clean up the bathtub and the sink, and then I want for you to clean the toilet. That's a clean-cut order of operations.
Exactly. That's what I've learned, to tell you specific directions.
Yeah, and sometimes more than 2 or 3 directions are very difficult for me to be able to follow, because for some reason my mind has difficulty retaining that. So
if it's verbal directions of more than
2 or 3 steps,
okay,
then it might either I have to come back to you saying, hey, I finished these things, what else did I have to do? Or have you write them down or something.
And that's easy enough here at home, because the things that we're talking about, and a big part, we've done this so much here at home that things stick, except for cleaning your room. that doesn't seem to stick.
Yeah.
And the bathroom, I just want to make a comment about this, that it's easy to look at your behavior in regards to this from outside of your emotions. And it's easy to look at it and see and come to the conclusion that you're just not doing what you were asked to do, or to not doing what you're responsible for doing.
Right.
And that is something that we've talked about a lot, that we're talking about right now, because it's important. Because you're saying that a viewpoint of somebody that doesn't have autism, this might be clear cut.
Yeah.
I told you, just go do this.
Yeah.
And if it's not getting done, it doesn't mean that you're being lazy. Doesn't mean you're being defiant. Doesn't mean you're being disrespectful.
Right.
Doesn't mean it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Most of the time, the majority of the time, that's not what's happening.
Right. I want to clarify something real quick.
Okay.
Oh, you finish and then I'll clarify.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh.
I think I was done. I'm just saying that there's more than, as parents and caregivers and friends and family, somebody that has autism, it's just it's a good idea to be open to emotions going on, anxiety going on, rather than just assuming that it's not done. So whatever the label would be, that there's a high probability that there's some anxiety happening, which has stopped them from moving forward in what they were responsible for doing.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So one thing I wanted to clarify was that, and of course my mind immediately went to, let me clarify this, from The Ghost of Mr. Chicken.
Ghost of Mr. Chicken, another one of my favorite movies. Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that sometimes whenever I'm so overwhelmed with everything and it stresses me out so much that I do something to de-stress, which usually is laying down in my bed and reading. That doesn't always happen. That's not the only reason why I go and lay down and read sometimes. But sometimes that is the reason why you find me laying down in my bed and reading.
Well, and sometimes it's just as simple as this, that I can see that you're stressed and I can have you do something different.
Yes.
So let's say it's a day of cleaning the house. You were given instructions on that day, at that particular time, that it's time for you to clean the bathroom. If if I can see that you're overloaded, you're stressed, rather than going over that list of things again, I will ask you, how do you feel about taking the trash out? Just they're both full. They need to go out. Can you just go into the, kitchen, take the trash out?
And more often than not, I can do that.
And then you're removed from the situation. You've completely removed from that stress. Then when you come back, I can help you by giving you a starting point.
Yes.
And then we start over again.
Yes.
And that's something that we've been at this for 30 years. So I recognize in you that look. I recognize that
glazed over.
That's exactly
the headlights.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And removing you from that stressful situation by doing something else is a really good way of helping you to regroup.
Yeah.
Because then you don't feel stressed, like you're standing there, you don't know what to do.
Right.
You've been given something that there's something to have to do with the motion. Of you getting something, taking it outside, and a couple of things. You just accomplished something that's pretty easy for you to do. Got away from the situation.
Yeah.
Got outside.
Yeah. It's like a giant reset button.
Exactly. So that's something that you've taught me over the years, that the best thing that I can do to help you is, if you need my intervention, because I don't always jump in.
Right.
Because you're really working on resetting yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't just try to take over. But when it's clear that you're needing that, and that's one of the things from the time that you were a teenager that I saw was helpful.
Yeah.
To remove you from the situation and then come back and we'll start again.
Yeah. And it was not just a thing at home where that is helpful. That's helpful in all aspects of my life. Whether it be in school, at home, at work, or just out with friends. Which
is why it's so important that you've worked really hard to be able to do the resetting for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that is the goal, right? For you to be able to do all of these things without needing to be prompted or redirected or given that reset.
Yeah.
There's anything else about that?
Not really.
Okay, because I want to ask you this about so verbal directions of more than 2 or 3 steps. What works best?
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I want for you to do this, followed by this, and then come and see me and I'll give you more directions.
We did that a lot.
Yes. And that is probably one of the biggest aids that I have had that you've adjusted to.
Right.
And it helps out so much to be able to just have 2 or 3 directions and that's it. With the stipulation of once they're done, come and see me. Because then I know exactly what I need to do, and it makes it so much easier to remember it if it's just 2 or 3 things tops.
Right.
Because I'm not going to remember everything that you say all the time. And
well, I've seen that in action. I've seen you totally blindsided that you didn't do something that we had talked about you needing to get done, and I can see this shock, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. So, and that's kind of like how it goes, that's kind of how that goes. So those are some things that go on inside the house. And I know that you're doing more and more things outside the house these days, certainly.
Yeah.
So what is it that you work with that you're still noticing that you can... I think you used the word the other day, tripping you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind is whenever there's, like, let's say I'm in a public setting where there's lots of people, lots of conversations going on, and I'm trying to focus on one conversation. And it is so difficult to be able to do that. It just trips me up because there's so much stimulation going on.
Right.
And from so many different conversations that trying to focus on one becomes very difficult.
Right. And so, and I think that I understand that about you, and I think that what happens is that to somebody else, something might be background noise. And for you, it seems like it all comes in at the same level.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So if we're having a conversation and the TV is on, the TV needs to be put on mute.
Yeah.
Also, if you're trying to concentrate on something and somebody starts cutting the grass, or the neighbor's working on their car and revving the engine.
Yeah.
Those kind of things are, very loud and get your attention. Probably more than they do for me.
7 or 8 times out of 10, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do?
Well, like you said, I'm still having trouble with it. But one thing I make sure to do is I make sure and let you know whenever it's happening.
Well, this is outside the house.
Oh, outside the house?
Yeah, I was wondering about outside the house. I guess that example was inside the house, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the group setting.
Yeah.
Of, like, being in a cafeteria or something. And there's a bunch of conversations going on. Sometimes I'm able to filter things out. Sometimes things just grab my attention. I don't know when either will happen. So, one thing I try and do is I try and look at the people that are talking. If not their eyes, then their lips. Because I'm not a lip reader per se, but it helps me focus on what they're saying.
Oh, okay.
So if there's multiple things going on around me sound wise, that is a point of concentration. If that makes any sense.
It does. So that seems like it would apply to when you were going to college.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of different people, we've talked before about noises that other people are making.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a test, including the sound of the pencil on their paper.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's true. And I paid attention to that after you'd said that to me last time, just as a side note. The difference in the sound of a pencil on paper versus a pen on paper.
Yeah.
And we've talked before about how my hearing is I hear all the high pitches.
Yeah.
So I don't like,
You don't like some music that I don't even hear high pitches for.
Right. Yeah. But sometimes when a pencil is writing on a paper, it hurts my ears.
Yeah.
Because it's got like don't even talk about the other squeaky stuff like a...
Nails on a chalkboard.
Or a knife on a plate.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
But those are like other... Even... Oh, my gosh. It just makes me bonkers.
One thing that I do find hilarious, though, is that people have been doing... On YouTube, there are people that do close-ups of them doing math equations, and they're making music out of their pencil strokes.
Oh, cool!
Like they did the entire Imperial March from Star Wars, just writing math equations.
That's funny. Those are your people.
Yes. And it's so funny the way that they do it, because it's a close-up of them doing actual math equations, but using numbers and letters and different things like that, that each stroke is a note in the music.
That's really cool.
With the perfect timing for it and everything. Which is really cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
Like, for example, 117. Writing it down. 117 1717.
Get it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So going back to if people are having multiple conversations, do you find that if you look at the person that's speaking, if that's not working, looking at their eyes, you watch their mouth, that helps you to...
It gives me a center to focus on.
Okay.
And if that doesn't help, I ask them to repeat what they said. And if that doesn't help, hey, can we go over to where it's a little bit quieter? I'm like, yeah, sure. Right. Or, you're just weird, leave me alone. Right. Another thing that trips me up sometimes is, like, whenever we're here in the podcast, I've done this multiple times, even in this podcast, where my mind makes a connection that has absolutely no relevance to what's being said. Yeah. Except for in my mind.
It happened. That happens so much when I'm talking to you. Yeah. And I'm, very comfortable acknowledging that I have a teeny tiny attention span. So I need to, when I concentrate, it's like a burst. Okay, here we go. We're going to get this done. Okay, then flames. And so,
which is also from Clue.
Yes.
And that just happened again. Yep. Exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly what we're talking about. Now, you do that constantly when I'm trying to talk to you. Constantly. Yes. And sometimes I give you this look and you go, oh, sorry. Because I can't indulge that, because I've got to stay on track, because what I'm saying I need to say, because then I've got to move on to the next thing. Yeah. But that happens all the time. Yeah. And so what you're saying is that even though you don't verbalize it, it's still happening.
Yes. Okay. Very much so. Yeah. And sometimes it just, like you said, gets me completely off track of what's being talked about.
Right. Have you ever felt the need to address that? Has it ever come up as an issue, other than you and I having conversations where, exactly what we're talking about right now will happen, and I'll just say, just stop, or I give you that look. Yeah. Just, listen, we have to stay on the subject here.
Well, I have a perfect example. Okay. This happened week to a week and a half ago. Yeah. And it was I was helping out Chrissy, or Dr. Ogilvy, at her office, setting it up and everything. And these guys came in and they were working on the door. And I looked at the one guy, and he looked like a cross between the guy who plays Wolverine, or he also played Ringling, I think, from The Greatest Show.
Oh, I never see that.
It's a movie. But Barnum and Bailey, that's what it was. For The Greatest Show. Right. The lead guy for that. And he looked like a cross between him and... I totally forget this other guy's name too, from he's in so many things. The Guardian. The one with the what is the naval thing? Not Navy, but the Coast Guard. Yeah, the
Kevin
Coast Guard.
Costner?
Yeah. Yeah, he looked like a mix between Kevin Costner and the guy who plays Wolverine. And then I was like, I told Chrissy this, and she's like, oh yeah, he kind of does. So then, of course, I have to tell him. and he quirked his eyebrow.
Oh.
And he looked, and I swear he looked exactly like Wolverine in that. And I was like, oh man, because he quirked his eyebrow just like he does in
That's funny.
yeah. And it was just hilarious.
That's funny. So,
and he's like, oh, I've never been called that before. So it was just really cool. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it works out like that, where they're really receptive about things like that, even though they're completely random. Mm-hmm. Other times, it's like, that's not the time or place.
Right. Which seems to happen when you come to telling jokes.
Oh my gosh. My jokes are good some of the time. Mm-hmm. It's just my timing that needs work.
Well, sometimes...
The timing could be terrible.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and you're working on that, and then
Yes.
sometimes there's a connection that you see to something that's benign, and you'll say something, and everybody that hears it is like, like that's so inappropriate, and you're like, what? And so it's also the constant interruptions of jokes.
Oh,
so
yeah.
conversations where you insert something that's funny and insert something that's funny and so when it happens a bunch, it's like, okay,
Stop. Yeah.
you need to stop because we're trying to get through something.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say that it's not just jokes that things like that happen with, because, I mean, a perfect example of this would be Grandpa's funeral. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to joke at a time like that. I mean, it's a serious thing that happened. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, it's not exactly timing per se, but I recognized that what I was feeling was not what others would consider appropriate, because I was happy that he was no longer suffering.
Right. Yes. So it's so humor can show up anywhere. Mm-hmm. So in regards to Grandpa's funeral, I was making the arrangements for his funeral, and they were checking on some things, and I was on hold. Mm-hmm. And when I was sitting there making arrangements for my dad's funeral, sitting on hold, these thoughts went through my head, and those thoughts were that the funeral, there's nothing funny about a funeral unless it was a clown's funeral. And then all these thoughts went through my head, like that he had so many people come to his funeral. You know, he had like 50 people come to his funeral. Yeah. They all got out of the same car.
Yeah.
And that he looks like he's smiling. Yeah. His makeup was done by Sherwin Williams.
That is horrible. That's horrible.
I know. Every time you try to close the casket, his nose honked.
Oh my god!
I know, and so those things just went through my head, and so I get what you're saying. Is like, it doesn't come from any place that's, anything other than.
I didn't know that's where those jokes came from.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, that's exactly where they came from, and so right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I understand about your mind going to something that, when you're saying that it's inappropriate.
It's not necessarily jokes.
It's just, yes, and I mean.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah. I get it. So.
But you're also a comedian. You think outside the box anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not saying that other people aren't going to understand this, but what I mean is that sometimes some people see things in black and white. Mm-hmm. I mean, for the longest time I did. Mm-hmm. It took me forever to realize that there are shades of gray in that.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think you tend to stay in the black and white, and you're just willing to, veer off that path occasionally when for the large part of your life that wasn't even a possibility.
Right.
Even an option for you.
Right.
And so I had asked you the other day when we were talking about what is it, that again in this conversation about tripping you up. That's why we're talking about it today, because it was a really good conversation. And you said it was about you thought that it was also about remembering the little things.
Yeah.
And you did mention some things like taking your medicine and brushing your teeth and things like that. It seems like that's falls under the executive functioning category.
Yeah.
But those things still are difficult for you to. Nothing just kind of nothing is like a spark that goes, oh, got to go do this.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the standalone thing that needs to. We're still, you're working and we're trying to help you work to get it connected to something else.
Yeah.
So those things are still difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of things are going well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. Is there anything else that you, in regards to things that trip you up?
The dogs.
Right. Right.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Nothing that comes to mind immediately.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll let you know if something else comes up.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I hope that this conversation helps some people, because I know that it's been something that we've dealt with, and
yeah, it took forever for us to get to this point.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, even just coming up with those seemingly simple solutions took a long time for us to hash out.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thanks for talking about that today.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And we appreciate everybody listening. It sounds like I just sighed, but I just took a deep breath. After being cold like this, it's just kind of still congested and stuff. So I hope everybody's healthy out there and cootie free, because this stuff is going around. It's made its way through the whole family.
Yeah, and I hope everyone's warm right now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of the country is really cold.
Oh, yeah. It's true.
Not here, really, but...
Right.
It's
kind of beautiful here.
Oh, way to rub it in, Mom.
Oh, sorry.
But really, I hope everyone's doing okay.
Yes. I hope everybody is. I'm going down to Palm Bay for a gig tomorrow.
Cool.
Palm Bay, Florida. So I imagine it's very warm down there. But it's on the east coast of Florida. So past Orlando, down that way.
Near Daytona Beach, or
Daytona. Speaking of Daytona, yeah, Daytona 500 peeps stole all the hotel rooms. So, yes, it's past Daytona Beach.
Okay.
It's past there, but it'll be fun. So, anyway, thank you for listening, everybody. We always appreciate it. And keep sending the emails. We appreciate those. And if you don't mind giving us 5 stars, we appreciate that. It bumps us up so people can find us easier.
Yeah.
And hope you have a wonderful weekend. And love you.
Bye.